Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So just a bit about our group at CSIRO before I get into the topic. Our group has been developing and deploying wireless sensor networks to monitor various things over the last decade in sectors from the environment, agriculture, health, biosecurity, and more recently, manufacturing as well. But today I'm going to focus on talking about our Internet of Nomadic Things, and particularly tracking flying foxes across Australia. But first, let's look at what we mean by nomadic things. So for us, nomadic things are highly mobile things. They can be potentially remote. So they don't necessarily have, you don't necessarily have cellular coverage or Wi-Fi where they go. And they have irregular movement patterns. So it's unlikely that there will be any kind of communication infrastructure where they go. Some examples of these are flying foxes. Obviously, that's what the talk is about. But also livestock in many large farms in Australia where farmers don't see their animals for days. There have been large multinational shipping companies that have adopted sensor-based logistics for providing near real-time information as your package is shipped, particularly for traceability and high-valued goods. And also human-centric sensing, such as for hikers or mountain bikers or anybody who might venture out of the range of typical communication infrastructure. And the way you get data back from these nomadic things is that you have gateway nodes that basically they're communication gateways that link you up with the cloud. And these gateways would be placed at strategic locations where you expect that once in a while, these nomadic things are likely to come back there. It might not be tomorrow. It might not be next week, depending on what things we're talking about. And that raises the need for actually collecting a lot of data while you don't have a connection on these things, potentially processing it, and then sending it back whenever you have that connection with the gateway. So that's a bit about how we think about this Internet of Nomadic Things. And we used it to track flying foxes in Australia. Now, why flying foxes? Australians seem to have a love-hate relationship with flying foxes. So ecologists and environmentalists argue that they are, in fact, seed dispersal agents, so they're vital in the health of the ecosystem. They eat fruits and then fly a few hundred kilometers somewhere else, and then they release the seeds. So they're quite valuable in the ecosystem, and they believe that their numbers are dwindling, so they're actually a threatened species in Australia. But on the other side of the coin, flying foxes do spread virulent and potentially deadly diseases. In Australia, they spread the Hendra virus to horses, which then spreads to humans. But also, you've probably heard of the recent Ebola outbreak in Africa, and that's been linked to a species of bats very similar to flying foxes that we have in Australia. So there is this sort of balancing act that has to be done, but in fact, very few people or nobody knows the absolute truth, because in fact, these animals are very highly mobile. They can travel up to 100 kilometers in one night. They can travel, in 1 week, they can travel more than 1,000 kilometers. So they're really very mobile, and they're also spread out all across the continent. So that figure there shows the east coast and south coast of Australia, and the populations of flying foxes and the various roosting camps in which they gather, and as they vary throughout the year. And some of these camps actually have tens of thousands of animals at one time. So because of their high mobility, we were looking into tracking them and knowing where they go and what they're doing. So what we did is we installed some of our gateway nodes at strategic flying fox roosting camps. And this is part of the National Flying Fox Monitoring Program in Australia. At the moment, it's covering much of the flying fox areas in North and South Queensland, spreading to northern New South Wales, and will spread all the way down to Melbourne, actually. We also developed at CSIRO a platform for tracking, so it has GPS for tracking the position of flying foxes. It weighs next to nothing and is just a bit larger than a 50-cent coin. It has solar panels, so it can operate near perpetually by recharging the battery every day. And we placed it on dozens of flying foxes. And effectively, what we get is very detailed trajectory information from these animals as they go through the landscape. So that animation is just showing each color there is a trajectory of different flying fox, different animal around Brisbane and Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast. And that data then feeds into models that we have of their movement. And based on the models, you can simulate very large populations of animals, look at how the disease risk is spreading and how their emergent behavior is happening. So I think I'm out of time. Thank you for listening.